Welcome back, guys, to episode 32 of the JPS Podcast with Dr. Spencer. Now, I'm going to say this wrong. Nadolsky?
No, that's perfect.
Ah, nailed it. I usually don't get him in one. And he is known as the Doc Who Lifts. So, for those of you who aren't sure who Spencer is, he's a board-certified physician in both family medicine and obesity medicine. And quite uniquely, Spencer promotes lifestyle change before pharmaceuticals and has fast become one of the fitness industry's leading experts on weight management. He's been featured in countless online publications. He's authored a few books, one of which is The Natural Way to Beat Diabetes, and he was even named Prevention Magazine as America's diabetes-defeating doctor. So he's got quite an impressive rap sheet, and he's also published a few other books online, The Fat Loss Prescription and The 5-Day Fat Flush. So he's helping people all across the world regain their health, lead a healthier lifestyle, and achieve their fitness goals. So welcome, Spencer.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Not a problem. And can you tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you went from a physician and I guess stumbled into the fitness industry?
Yeah, it's very simple. I grew up in a very athletic-minded family. Brother is a very good wrestler, football player. He went to university, college to wrestle, got a scholarship. He's 4 years ahead of me, so then I came into high school after him, and he was a phenom in high school. My dad was the wrestling coach at the time and also the biology chemistry teacher, so very scientific-minded along with athletic-minded. So I come into high school after my brother leaves, and I didn't do as well in the beginning. We had different body shapes. He was a lot shorter, stockier, very muscular for his size, and I was a little bit lankier, still strong relative to a normal person, but for my size, not nearly as strong as he was. The short story is basically that I used science, nutrition science and exercise science, and just tried to build my body to the same relative size that he was. And so I ended up going from 145 pounds. By the time I was a senior, I was about 230 pounds, so over 4 years, and a lot of it muscle, very strong. So I ended up becoming a state champion, which is a very big deal, and becoming all-state football, and eventually wrestling in college on a scholarship, and doing really well in college. So the story is basically that I use science and exercise and nutrition to get good at performance. I think it's fun to help people get better performance, but for me, I've just loved being able to change someone that's just an awful lifestyle to just a pretty good lifestyle and watch huge changes in their health. So, and I went to medical school, and medical school is the same for pretty much everybody. You learn the same stuff: anatomy, physiology, and pathophysiology, pharmacology, drugs, etc. But I wanted to take what I learned to get good at sports and basically apply it to the general population. Because all they really needed is a fraction of my obsession, right? And anybody else's that's a fitness fanatic. So then I went into family medicine, and then also got a specialty in obesity medicine. And basically, my big thing is talking to the patients, listening to them, understanding what kind of, what stuff they're going through, and help them transition to a more fitness, health, lifestyle-minded life, pretty much. That's kind of my, short story. I could go through lots of fun little things, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, awesome. And I wanted to first discuss, the problem with the healthcare system in westernized countries and why you've set out to break the status quo.
Yeah, lots of different problems with the system. So a lot of people give doctors flack. They think, oh, they just want to prescribe drugs. Oh, they're just getting money from drug companies, and that's why they're giving prescriptions. I mean, really, it's actually not true. In medical school, we learn first-line treatment for most chronic disease is lifestyle. And in fact, I've written a few articles with my brother. And if you look at the major guidelines for all chronic diseases, whether it's diabetes, whether it's hyperlipidemia or hypertension, high blood pressure, osteoarthritis, and all sorts of other things that you wouldn't even think of, the number one first line treatment is lifestyle changes, uh, nutrition, exercise, etc., weight loss. But in medical school, people go to medical school and they almost brush it off because it's not as sexy. Lifestyle is not as sexy. I try to make it sexy, but it's just not.
The
It's so,
infographics help.
yeah, it's so cool to learn about the new pills and everything like that. So you start combining that where we learn that it's number one treatment, but we actually don't learn the actual lifestyle treatment, how to do it. Number one, we get a little bit of nutrition, maybe a little bit of exercise, not much. But most medical students are very passionate, and what's on the board examinations of what we have to pass in order to get board certified, etc. Most of it is pathophysiology and pharmacology, not the intricacies of lifestyle medicine. So you combine that, and then you put people into a system where even if they knew the best lifestyle management for somebody, they wouldn't even have enough time to give it to somebody. Yeah. So I'm out of the clinic now. I'm doing a very out of the box type of practice of medicine right now. But in the clinic, I mean, I was a champion for lifestyle medicine. Everybody knew me as that. But even still, I only had, 10 minutes with a patient at a time. Yeah. So I'd have to have them back more frequently just to give them the what I thought they needed. And that's why I also ultimately wrote my books, so I can just simply give them the book and have them read it in between visits. But think about how much you need to know about a person in order to prescribe a very good, tailored, personalized lifestyle plan for them. I mean, not only that, you got to know their, in a regular office visit, you need to know their medicines, you need to know their past medical history. So then knowing all that, how are you supposed to then give a very good lifestyle plan? I mean, so what most doctors say is, hey, you should probably lose some weight. You should probably, diet and exercise. You need to eat a little bit less, move a little bit more. It's very simple, not incorrect, but it's just maybe not in depth. And even if you knew the good information, it's just not enough time. So there's multiple issues with the system, all the way starting from medical school, all the way to when you're practicing medicine. And it's an interesting thing. I mean, I literally talk about it every single day because it's frustrating because, as a lot of people say too, is that most people think, oh, healthcare comes from the doctor. And no, most of health is not from a doctor anyway. It's the stuff you do outside the doctor's office. And maybe you have some medical issues that do need to be helped from a doctor, but most of what you do for your health is not going to be from the doctor's office. And so there's lots of issues there from a patient standpoint too.
Yeah, for sure. You raise a lot of really, really good points there, man. And I completely agree that health is a function of what you do every day, not just what you do for, a couple of minutes or a visit to a personal trainer or a doctor and so forth. And when you're when you have your patients visit you, obviously there are a lot of reasons that people struggle to manage their weight. It's very multifaceted. But what are the most common problems that people are facing in understanding how to lead a healthier lifestyle and get control of their weight and health?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually sent out I have 10,000 people on my email list, and I just kind of wanted to see from my social media and from my email list, what do you find most hard, the hardest thing about losing weight and keeping it up? I want to get into the minds of people so I can help them better and help, marketing is another thing, trying to figure out what to say, because we're losing right now, people that are science-based are losing to these super marketers. They know how to baffle with BS, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to learn this stuff in order to use science-based information and be a little bit sexier with it. But in the clinic, there were certain patterns, and then me reaching out with these questionnaires, trying to figure it out. There's not one major thing, but what I see is a lot of people think it needs to be complicated. A lot of people follow very restrictive, non-science-based diets. If you're able to explain and simplify something, take all the unnecessary steps out of a lifestyle plan to make it to break down the barriers for somebody to follow it. Finding something that's sustainable also means making it simpler. So I always say you got to make it as simple as possible. It has to be tailored towards the person. You can say patient-centered or client-centered, client-based, whatever you want to say. It has to be. It can't just be based on some imaginary person. It has to be flexible in nature, not too rigid or restrictive. But it also has to be science-based and work. So it does. You still have to get down to energy balance. And so finding the reasons why people can't stick to that. Maybe they've given bad information in the past. Physiologically and environmentally, we are driven to gain a lot of weight or to not lose weight because of the way our genetics are, the way our physiology is, the way our environment pushes us in the wrong direction. So maybe people can't necessarily articulate why they can't, but it seems to be that when they try to lose weight, they follow some restrictive, ridiculous, non-science-based diet and exercise plan, and then they simply cannot sustain doing it, and then they give up, and then it's just too easy to go back onto onto the standard way of living life, which is eating a bunch of high-calorie foods and not moving much. So I make fun of people that say, just eat less and move more, but essentially we have to find ways to we do have to do that from a science-based way of thinking, but making it as simple as possible, making it so a patient can sustainably do it, and making sure they don't hate their life. And that's really it. But patients don't necessarily know how to articulate that, but that's essentially what they're saying when I get these responses.
Yeah, awesome. I've definitely seen a lot of similar things in my practice. Obviously, I've been coaching and I've worked with quite a few people now, so there's a lot of commonalities that we're experiencing with people who are trying to lose weight, and it's all the more difficult when you're thrown in an environment that we have today. And you mentioned that the advice of eating less and moving more is fundamentally true, but possibly not the best advice. So what do you see to be wrong with dietitians, coaches, doctors who just say to their patients, clients, just eat less, move more? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I've written a few articles on this. Other people have said that, and what people will ultimately try to say is that you're saying that calories in, calories out isn't true, and it's like, no, not at all. I'm just saying we got to figure out. Just making a sound bite of eat less, move more, it's meaningless. We got to figure out how to actually help somebody do that in a sustainable manner. So, like, nobody knows, at least my patients, they don't have the faintest clue of how to actually do that in a sustainable manner. So, like, some people think, well, I guess I just got to do a paleo diet, or I got to do a ketogenic type of diet. I guess that's the only way. And they don't even necessarily understand that's what's actually making them eat less. They just eat less, move more is not sexy sounding. It doesn't give you a direction or strategy of how to actually do that. And making your life not miserable. It's almost like the same thing. It's a cliche now, but what the question is, what diet works the best? And I've said this many times, but now it's kind of become another soundbite that's similar to eat less, move more, is whatever diet you can sustainably adhere to. It sounds great and it's true, but actually making it happen is another question. So, like, telling patients to eat less, move more, it's like, okay, now what? So how do I actually do that? And so, it's fundamentally true. It's just, it's not really helpful. That's all.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's interesting that you mentioned how your patients are often trying to make things too complex. But then here on the other end of the spectrum, we have this, really, really simple advice, which, cannot be misinterpreted in any way, shape, or form. You simply just eat less food and move more. So how do we find that balance? What is, the best way to, bridge the gap between having a science-based approach and, doing what is simple, because we know that's often the best solution at first anyway.
Yeah, so ultimately we do have to find, for each individual, I do have to help them. I don't tell them what to do. We kind of tango. We find what's going to work best for them. it's not too patient based or centered, because if you do too much of what they want to do, it won't work as well. And if you do too much of what I want to do, they won't be able to follow it. So ultimately, we kind of find the best path for them, finding ways to reduce the amount of calories they're bringing in. And, the whole burning calories is a little bit more complex because exercise will only do so much. I'm sure you've seen the constrained energy systems and all that stuff, research kind of talking about. But yeah, if they're very sedentary, doing some sort of going from nothing to something will be helpful, but then ultimately finding ways to reduce their calories. So for instance, and I have buckets for each patient, like patterns for each type of patient that I put them in. So like one patient, maybe they just have a completely atrocious fast food diet, right? You don't need to do a super overhaul and make their diet a perfectly like super well balanced macronutrient calorie based diet. You basically pick probably their lowest hanging fruit. So if they're going to McDonald's every single day for lunch, that person, all you really have to do is find a substitute for that. Hey, could you just make, and it doesn't have to be grilled wild salmon and some broiled braised steamed broccoli and asparagus and something like that, and a little bit of brown rice. No, it does. Can you just bring a ham and cheese sandwich and a piece and an apple? Like that's what guys used to do. And I don't want to say just guys and gals. You bring a sack lunch and it's just a ham sandwich, and somewhere along the lines, people will be like, oh, that ham's processed, etc., whatever. But it's like, no. That's much better than the McDonald's that they're eating for lunch. That's giving them 1,000 calories. Give them something that's more like 400 calories. That they're also not going to be super hungry with afterwards. And if you do that one thing, it has to be you can't just do small little steps, because if it's too small, they won't see much progress, and then they'll say, forget this guy. So you do have to give them results. But for this one person with that pattern thing, you find one big thing that can change. And you have them modify that one thing, and then you just keep going like that, and eventually teaching them, maybe they will get more into it to where it's like, oh, now they understand the calories and macronutrients, and now you can start making meal templates or have them track their calories and stuff like that. So that's patient one. Another person, maybe they're just they always say this, I'm eating healthy, I'm not eating red meat. I don't even know why they say that, because that doesn't even mean anything. Because if they're eating sirloin, it's the same as eating freaking turkey or fish or chicken. It's just, you could get into heme iron and some of these other little small nuanced things, but in terms of a macronutrient calorie, I don't care. Like not eating red meat doesn't mean anything for me for losing. And anybody listening to you probably understands the same thing, but it doesn't mean anything. But that's what they think. I'm eating all organic. I'm eating pretty healthy. I don't eat red meat. And it's like, clearly this person has no idea about energy balance and their caloric intake. So for that person, instead of just going, here, change this one thing, is this doable? Yeah. You probably go, all right, let's get a diet record of what you're doing. That other person, they give a 24-hour, recall, and that all they have to do is bring, instead of McDonald's, eat a ham sandwich and an apple or something like that, something that they'd enjoy. For this other person, they're gonna come up with, oh, for breakfast I have a yogurt and what it's gonna sound like is this 1,000-calorie diet. Basically, what they're gonna describe is like a 1,000-calorie diet, and they think that they're eating quite well. But you have to, and this is where it's very important to get a very detailed diet log, and you have to teach them about calories and macronutrients and portion sizes, because they think they're eating healthy, and it may be from a quality standpoint, it may seem like that they're eating clean, bro, but unfortunately these people they don't understand how much they're ingesting. I mean, none of them understand how much they're ingesting, but at least this person, they get an idea of what's good quality, even though they don't eat red meat and they think that's a quality thing. So you can teach them a little bit about quality, but it's really going to come down to portions. And then beyond that, and then there are other people with just slightly off diets. Maybe they kind of have an idea of good quality too. But these other people, I actually do what's called meal templates. And so when people think of like meal plans are rigid because it's like you have to eat this type of food and this amount of food. So you give a meal plan, it's like you have to eat 6 ounces of tilapia, which is the worst tasting fish in the world, but it's always tilapia because it's super lean. You have to eat, 1 cup of cauliflower and 1 cup of brown rice. Well, instead of that, which is too rigid and slightly restrictive, why don't you give them more flexibility? Yeah, maybe you teach them about the portions with like, okay, 6 ounces of a lean protein, and you can swap that out for other types of lean protein. It doesn't have to be even meat. It can be yogurt. It can even be tofu if you want to you want to be crazy. But yeah, like and then teaching them, okay, that 1 cup of starch, it doesn't have to be brown rice. It could be something else. You could even swap it for fruit. So you start getting this idea of, all right, this is your meal template. It's going to teach portions. It's going to teach food quality. And if you follow this, you can still eat some of the foods you enjoy, and you can even have room for packaged snacks that you understand the caloric amount with. That's kind of my approach for most people, because I find that it's able to teach the good habits of healthy eating and caloric balance and portion control. But you start seeing these different patterns in different people that don't cook, people that need maybe they need meal replacements. So the other thing is you see is sometimes, like, everybody's like, no, you shouldn't drink your calories. Well, actually the data shows that meal replacement protein shakes are the non-pharmaceutical most powerful thing you can do to help somebody lose weight and keep it off. The only problem is that, I don't know what the percentage is. I'm going to say it's at least half are going to get really sick of drinking protein shakes. Mm-hmm. But there are some people that it's like, I don't know, for lunch, for the rest of my life, or for breakfast, most days I could drink a protein shake and maybe have an apple. So finding ways to just completely lower the caloric intake, help their macronutrient balance if you need to, bump up their protein and lower fat or lower carbohydrates, depending on what you want to do. Finding ways to do it in the simplest way possible without having them to think or do tedious things. Because even tracking calories and macronutrients, it is super good. I mean, I know people that are just so successful, but I found that most people, it becomes, despite it being one of the, like, it takes 5 to 10 minutes maybe of your whole day. It's so annoying to some people that they just won't do it. And like, I know, because I'm kind of like a well-oiled machine when it comes to certain lifestyle, but it annoys the hell out of me. And so I know if it annoys me and my patients keep saying it, I understand. So if people do it for the rest of their lives, oh man, they were going to be super successful. And it's like, it is super easy, I think, but it's so annoying and tedious that most people won't do it for good. So anyway, I just went on for a long time, but this is kind of how I put different patients in different buckets. And, ultimately you want to personalize and individualize for each person and make it something that they can do and not, you don't want to be a hammer and see everything as a nail. Because, if you think, nope, you got to track your calories, you got to track your macronutrients, and it'll work for a lot of people, but there are going to be enough other people that it won't necessarily work for, and they just don't want to do it, or they just don't get it, or something like that. Anyway, long rant.
No, yeah, I think you raised many very valid points, and one of which really resonates with me is that calorie tracking isn't for everyone, and there needs to be a large learning curve before people can actually do that properly. So I definitely think that keeping things simple and teaching people the basics of energy balance and macronutrient profiles, and just being able to understand what different foods contain energy-wise, macronutrient-wise, is the first step in teaching nutrition. And what I wanted to ask you about, Spencer, was, the obesity epidemic. We always, look to a scapegoat. Well, at least the general population do anyway. Those of us who are a little bit more in tune with the research tend not to sway too far on either side of the pendulum and see that this whole, weight gain thing is very much multifaceted, like I mentioned. But what is your take on the addictiveness of foods? Because now this has become a really hot topic. People are blaming sugar, and do you think this is a misnomer? And can you explain what your stance is on that?
Yeah, no, it's actually a great question. I've written a few little blurbs and blogs and all sorts of things on this because so you have one camp that's like very sensational. They'll say Oreos and foods are as addictive or more addictive than cocaine, and they're basing this off of, I believe, functional MRI studies where they show parts of the brain lighting up like it did with cocaine or amphetamines, or even more so. So it's like you got sensational people like that saying sugar and these foods are more addictive than highly controlled, very addictive drugs. And if anybody's ever treated somebody with a substance abuse issue, oh man, that's something that's a big statement. It's tough to swallow, but okay, let's just let's just take it for what they say. And then you have on the other camp, nope, foods cannot be addictive. You can't compare foods to drugs. That's ridiculous. No foods are addictive, type of thing. It's like, okay, well, why don't we let's just look at the science here. So these people on one side are saying absolutely opposite. And of course, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. So we look at neurobiologists. So Dr. I'm sure you know of Dr. Guillenet. I don't know if you've had him on the podcast. So he's a neurobiologist. I've gone to multiple, since medical school, I've gone to one or two large obesity conferences per year where a few neurobiologists do some sort of speaking about the brain and how parts of the brain are related to addiction, wanting, liking, dopamine, opioids, this mesolimbic center, the reward center in the brain, and how certain foods may light up that area, and how certain people with obesity can have dysfunctions in that area. So you start learning the kind of the nuances of just whether food's addictive versus not, and you start going, okay, there is some overlap maybe of how drugs work and how some of these foods may have similar properties. So you just keep going, and working with patients, they keep saying, it's so hard for me to stay away from fill in the blank food, chocolate, sugar. And when they say sugar, it's never table sugar. It's like donuts, it's cookies, it's high carb. I mean, the term hyper palatable, but like just extremely tasty foods that are likely high in starch, sugar, fat, salt, and have good mouthfeel and everything like that. Patients, I mean, they swear up and down, I can't. And so am I going to tell them, well, you do know that foods are not addictive, so you're an idiot, you're a liar? Or do I say, yep, you're addicted to this food, and we have to treat you like that? Or do we go, okay, so this is actually what I do. I go, well, okay, so here's the thing. When we start looking at the science, there are some overlaps in the brain. Now, it's probably not the same thing as a drug addiction. There are some physiological chemical things happening with, and I may even talk about, depending on how much they know, maybe talk about dopamine and opioids and everything like that in the brain. But I say, there is some overlap. There are ways to overcome that with behavioral therapies, just like with drug addiction. There are support classes. There's behavioral therapies, cognitive behavioral therapies. Acceptance-based therapy is something I work on a lot, which we can talk about. But then there are also actually medicines that work in the same parts of the brain that you use for drug addiction. For instance, alcohol abuse, there's a drug called naltrexone that you can use to help people stop their cravings and wanting of alcohol. It blocks the opioid receptors in the brain. So that medicine, and then there's another medicine called bupropion, which is commonly used for depression, but they also found it also works for smoking cessation. It helps people stop their craving for smoking and nicotine. That works up in the brain with norepinephrine and dopamine. So what they found is that, we got a drug that works for smoking cessation. We got a drug that works for drinking cessation or alcoholism. They've actually combined those two drugs, and that helps with not everybody, but some people with a lot of weight loss, and it helps with cravings with foods, and it works in the same centers of the brain that are with these drugs. So just to say there's no addiction and then it's as addictive as cocaine is probably not right. What I like to say is these foods may have addictive-like properties, and there's a recent review that kind of says that basically these more hyper-palatable It's not just strictly sugar, and it's not just strictly one type of food. It's these food with a combination of properties. Make them addictive like. I wouldn't call them addictive. And I don't want to give power to the food. Patients in the moment, they still have power. And it's not going to be as this powerful craving as it is to have a drink or maybe amphetamines, meth or something like that. But there's clearly a draw. I mean, you talk to these patients, they have a draw, and it's like you still have the power. So you try to empower the patient, take away this idea that they're completely addictive, but normalize what they're thinking. Don't just tell them they're idiots, but tell them, no, what you're feeling is probably real, but we're going to help you, empower you to make sure you understand you do have a choice. And if worse comes to worse, we may be able to use medicines that work up in your brain that's going to block that stuff. And that's again, I hate the very polarizing. Let's be science-based about this, and kind of look at all the data and not just take a very polarized stance, although that works with marketing and stuff like that, but it's just not very science-like. So that's another long-winded answer for a short question, but I think it deserves some nuanced talk.
Yeah, no, that was very informative, and I think the listeners will really enjoy your take on that, as did I. And another very similar topic, which I wanted to get your opinion on and share with the listeners, was how you perceive artificially sweetened beverages in health and weight loss, whether or not they're safe and beneficial to dieters. What's your take on that, Spencer?
Yeah, so you talk about this on the internet, and this is I can't explain it, but this is similar to talking about vaccines. It's similar to talking about politics. I've never seen such a polarizing topic that's beyond like politics and vaccines. I mean, artificial sweeteners. I mean, I post about it, and I know my crowd pretty well. I was always big on Facebook, and so people that follow me are pretty clear that it's like I'm not pro artificial sweeteners or what we call non-nutritive sweeteners, because stevia is natural, but I'm not pro, but I'm not anti at all. And so my Facebook is usually like, yep, and there's some people in there that get mad. But I recently grew my Instagram, and they don't know me as well on there, and people just fling mud. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Of course you can.
They call someone called me a Dr. Fuckwad on there. It was hilarious. It was actually pretty funny. So my stance is this, and I've done a few reviews on some of the medical news syndicate websites with my brother, kind of looking at some of these meta-analysis and trials that have been done. The deal is this: there's actually been studies showing that artificial sweeteners compared to water, you actually do better when dieting, which seems so counterintuitive because there's so much epidemiological evidence, meaning correlation evidence for those who drink a lot of diet sodas and weight gain prospectively. However, when you look at experimental data, meaning they tell one person to do one thing and one person to do the other thing, it doesn't pan out, at least over a year. So, and they're mixed too. There was one study recently, I think it was with type 2 diabetics, the people that drank water as opposed to artificial sweeteners did better. But then there was another study showing people that actually did artificial sweetened beverages did better than those who were told to drink water. I think this is interesting stuff. I do it more on I tell people, look, worst comes to worst, water's probably the best to drink. If you're really worried about it, just who cares? Don't drink it. But the data we have right now seems to show they're generally safe, especially if you're not drinking a 2 liter of it or more a day, which I think would be ridiculous, although I've met some patients that do that. And what some of these people on the internet say is like, are you kidding me? Regular soda is way better for you than diet soda. And it's like, I don't know if you've seen how diabetes works, but like you're already eating a really crappy high caloric diet, and you guys are drinking a liter or 2 liters of regular soda. If you simply switch that for diet, and I've had many patients do it. I don't know, and maybe 100, maybe 100. I don't know, maybe not 100 patients, but definitely combined patients and online followers who sent me stories, who switched out that liter or 2 liters of regular soda for diet soda. Their triglycerides go down, their blood sugars and everything improves, and they lose, 20, 30 pounds maybe over the course of 6 months or so. And it's like, oh, so this other person's saying, no, if you drink soda, you better drink the regular stuff because those artificial sweeteners are just poison. They're toxic. Well, what exactly is it toxic? I mean, you start talking about different, and there's multiple different artificial sweeteners. So a lot of it, it's always aspartame, or sucralose, and they come up with all these cockamamie, theoretical biochem reasoning. But like when you start looking at the science and what actually has been experimented with, it doesn't really pan out. So I tell people, look, if you want to look at it like a nicotine patch, when you're smoking and you want to stop smoking, and you don't want to use those drugs that, one of them I mentioned and another one called Chantix, you want to use a nicotine patch, you're still on the nicotine and you're just lowering the dose. So I tell people, go from regular to diet soda. And then ideally, yeah, you'd probably wean off of that. But honestly, I don't see anything out there in the literature that says you should probably have the regular over diet soda. I always say, if you're going to drink soda, make it diet. Don't make it regular. Again, if you're within your caloric balance or whatever, yeah, you want your one vice a day is a regular soda. It's probably fine. It doesn't matter. But most people, they're so hypercaloric and they're overweight that that wouldn't be something I would propose. So I think they're fine. I think these zealots, they like using scare tactics and sensational information. Guys like Dr. Mercola, and they find these obscure cherry-picked studies, and it's like, no, we got to look at the totality of studies. And look, so a lot of us are biased. We drink diet sodas all the time, and so we want it to be safe. But we got to look at the data, and the data shows it's probably safe. That's my stance.
Awesome. I'm sure that's good news for many people out there who are chugging away plenty of Diet Coke as they watch this episode. And on a related note, and I'm sure you're probably hearing this one a lot from your patients, as I know I do with my clients, is the health halo, and that people perceive certain foods as healthy. Such as organic and clean and all of these kind of things. So why is the labeling of foods detrimental to dieters? We touched on it ignores energy balance and whatnot, but how else can this be potentially harmful to somebody's fat loss efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said if you don't understand the number one concept of fat loss, weight loss, and energy balance, you're going to have troubles. Because for instance, I've had many patients who are, like I said before, I'm eating healthy. I eat everything organic. Well, that was the one thing that gave me the idea of, and I don't know if you saw this, a couple of years ago, I posted regular Reese's peanut butter cups versus organic Justin's peanut butter cups. And I was like, look, they have the same caloric value, same macronutrient value. But one's organic and one's not.
One's
it doesn't
expensive.
matter which one you eat. And so that little infographic went viral. And that was like one of the first in the fitness industry that did all these infographics. And that thing, thousands of shares, just thousands all over the internet. And people are like, yeah, but those ingredients in the Reese's peanut butter cups are bad for you. I'm like, the negligible amount of soy lecithin or lecithin in there, and some of these other things, it's so minuscule. It's not going to matter for fat loss. I personally actually like the taste of the Justins. I'm not mad. It's just the point that these patients really think that because something's organic, they think you can just eat it doesn't matter how much of it you eat. It's going to somehow help you lose weight. Gluten-free, fat-free even. That's kind of one of the things that got us in trouble, 20 years ago. Everything went look, this doesn't have any fat, so it's good for you. Yeah, just eat a bunch of Twizzlers. I remember I used to eat Twizzlers, these special, it said fat free. And I was like, oh yeah, sweet. This is ridiculous. I could eat a ton of those things. But if you don't understand the common or the normal principles, the scientific principles, it doesn't have to be complex. You just need to know the simple little bits of it. These health halos can be dangerous. Trying to think of a few other things, cholesterol free, anything free, anything like that. That's just trying to make you think that it's necessarily good for you, and it may be fine for you, but these health halos just they don't help. I think understanding the principles would help a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with everything that you said there, and labeling food can be the start of a really unhealthy relationship with food as well, which we know is very much a big player in our ability to manage weight long term. And for many who are wanting to start a weight loss journey, it can be overwhelming, and they fear that they're not going to succeed, that there's going to be so many obstacles and barriers in their way, and that they can't consistently change their behaviors or adhere to their plan. They fear that they're going to fail. So for listeners who may have some doubt or be working with clients and patients who are experiencing these types of things, what is your advice?
Yeah, so the one big thing is like, look, yes, it's hard to lose weight and keep it off. Yes, a lot of things are fighting against you. And this is where I talk about the acceptance-based therapy. Accept that these things are going to happen. Control what you can. Accept what you cannot. We cannot accept our environment. We have to accept that our environment is going to be working against us. We have to accept that our body is going to be working against us. But to make it easier, learn the principles of scientific weight loss and make it as simple as possible on you. And then remember the whole all or nothing mindset. Some people think I'm either on a diet or I'm off. It's like, no, this whole idea is you're either first or you're last. That doesn't make sense. Like, so a lot of patients think I need to be 100% on a diet or I just can't do it at all. And that doesn't make any sense. In grade school, in high school, college, university, whatever you want to say, on a test, I don't remember having, maybe there was one quiz in there, but I don't remember having a quiz where you either got 100% or a 0%. You can get an A, B, a 90%, 80%, B. You can even get a 70%, which is a C. I wouldn't go 60%, but get a D. But so you start, like I always try to say, think consistent. Don't think perfection. If you can do something perfectly without, and there is no perfect because you would have to have some sort of blood fingerprint analyzer, and we don't have that. The DNA tests out there for fitness and diets are just absolute bogus. So we don't have it yet. So there's no such thing as perfect. But think, if you have what you think is the perfect diet that's set for you, you don't have to be 100% on that diet or 0%. You can be, just somewhat close to it, whether it's 70, 80%, 90%. Just think close, not perfect. And these are big things because, again, these people, they get intimidated and they're like, oh my God, I just had a soda, I just had a piece of pizza, I can't follow this. It's like, who cares? Just go back to what you were doing before as best as you can. Don't think all or nothing. Again, easier said than done. This is something I have to drill into my patients and followers all the time. It's not something that's easily just, oh, okay, Dr. Spencer, I'll follow what you say. It's easier said than done, but it's if we just keep drilling it, you'll hear it from me, you'll hear it from all the science-based guys, and people who actually care about helping you get to your goals. You don't have to follow anything perfectly. Just understand, getting close. Think of it as a marathon, not a sprint, and you'll be good.
Yeah, awesome advice, Spencer. And for someone who has recognized that they have unhealthy habits, whether it's snacking too much, just making poor nutritional decisions, not being motivated to exercise, and obviously each of these will require a completely different approach. But what would be your number one advice or tip for breaking habits? How would somebody go about that?
Yeah, so this company Precision Nutrition, they're big on this, is kind of one habit at a time. I don't stick to that necessarily. I stick to, let's find just a few big low-hanging fruit, big rocks that some people say, and let's just switch those to something that you could do. And if we can just pick a few things, and that's something that's you'll be able to tolerate, then let's just do those, and you can have success if as long as they are like pretty big, offenders. Some people will be like, oh gosh, I went from eating farm raised salmon to wild caught salmon. That's another health halo. Why am I not losing weight? Because that doesn't matter. I went from regular beef to pasture raised grass fed beef. It's like that doesn't. That wasn't a big rock. That was nothing. That may be helpful for the environment. Maybe, I don't know. But trying to find a big energy rock and something very simple and doable, and just a few of them. Doesn't have to be just one. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a few things that are just doable, and it doesn't have to be much, basically.
Awesome. Yeah, I like tackling the big rocks. That's always a good way to start. And in your experience, what is the one trait that your successful patients possess in getting on top of all these health-related and fitness related goals?
Yeah, there's a few of them. So I don't want to give a negative connotation, but the patients that do the best, they buy in to this lifestyle a little bit, and almost obsessed. But I don't want to say obsessed because that's negative, but it's something where they just make it a good chunk of their lives. You don't have to be a crazy fitness fanatic like you see and start blogging and doing and changing your whole thing and become a cult follower. However, I will say that the patients that do the best, there's something about it that they just buy in, and they're just like, yep, this is a part of my life now. Maybe there was something, they just were missing this part of their life. And again, I feel like people that become too obsessed, there's a problem there, because that can give some mental anguish and obviously can put some issues, strain on family dynamics, social dynamics, friends, and whatever. But if people make it a decent chunk of their life without going so far as maybe becoming obsessed in the negative way, they're the best. And it's not any one thing. Sometimes it is maybe counting calories. Sometimes, one of the things is like, oh my God, I love lifting weights now, and I love eating my meal template. This is my template. Or, yep, got my shake for the day and my fruit. It's like, bam, they're so consistent with it. And they just, it's like they love it. It's hard to explain. The patients that don't, they think they need a quick fix of some sort, and they just wanted some sort of, they fail. And I have lots, we're almost out of time, but I have lots of stories how I've tried to manufacture, that. So I'll just say quickly, not a lot, but a good number of patients in the clinic that had lost a decent amount of weight and then wanted me to help them further, they were very successful on something like the 21-day fix or one of these Beachbody programs like P90X. It gave them the boost to help them start, and then I helped them kind of finish. Not every patient did that, but enough to where I was like, I wonder if I could manufacture this. So I actually created, you mentioned the 5-day fat flush, and I created something called a 27-day fat loss prescription. It was supposed to be kind of based off my book, but a more rapid fat loss plan. It worked for a lot of people, except that I got too many people that were in this quick fix mindset. And so it didn't backfire, because I got a lot of people doing exactly what I wanted, that same rapid fat loss with a big win out the gate, and then realizing, oh yeah, I actually got to make this a part of my lifestyle. I got enough of those to be like, okay, it wasn't such a loss, but I got too many of it marketed too much to the quick win, quick fix mindsets. It actually it rubbed me the wrong way to where I'm completely changing what I'm going to do. So like so and I don't even know if it would matter, because maybe I would, like, maybe if I didn't market it that way, I'd still get the other people that would still trust me, and maybe I wouldn't have gotten those quick fix. But if somehow I can convey how to get this quick fix mindset out of the system, you can do rapid fat loss. That's fine. That's a good way to start and then get going and realize it's a lifestyle change and all this stuff. But there's too many people that just think, I got to do a quick fix and that's it for a month. And then what? Then what? No, you still got to keep doing something that's at least transition from that rapid fat loss. That's what I did. I do rapid fat loss for a lot of people that need a lot to lose, and then we transition to a sustainable program. But some of these people, they just, I don't know, they feel like, I got to do this, and then it's like, well, wait, what do I do now? Can I just go back to before? It's like, no, and then I get frustrated. So again, so what the failures are the ones that think they just need to do something for a month, and that's it.
I really like that. It's a lifestyle. It isn't just something that we can achieve tomorrow or in a couple of weeks. And I think that you're spot on in approaching things for those who need it in a very rapid manner to get that buy-in. And then, it does give you a bit more power and control, in a sense, to be able to transition into something that's more flexible, sustainable, over the long term. Spencer, my final question for you is, does the doc who lifts drink alcohol? What's your favorite drink? And what are your recommendations to your patients on alcohol consumption?
Yeah, I do. I do drink. Like, I actually seldomly drink. I don't know, some of the listeners, I don't know if they were at the fitness summit a couple of years ago. I drank a little bit too much tequila and had to evacuate my system. But yeah, my favorite drink, I actually like a good Bloody Mary. If Alan Aragon ever listens to this, or you can ask him about my strong Bloody Marys at the fitness summit. But I like a good Bloody Mary. If I'm out for brunch, good Bloody Mary and a mimosa. Sometimes I'll do just a glass of white wine, a Chardonnay or something. I'm very simple. I'm not drinking Manhattans or something like that. But yeah, I drink seldomly, and so my recommendations, there are actually a lot of patients that go, but what about alcohol? It's like, okay, why don't we be reasonable about this? How much are you drinking? If it's a bottle of wine, that's a problem. So yeah, if you can't drink a bottle of wine, no. The general recommendations are, for women, the equivalent of one drink, and for men, the equivalent of one, maybe two drinks. And I stick with that. I from a health standpoint, not just from fat loss, from just strictly health, I stick with that. If they don't like to drink, it doesn't make a difference. But one drink should not break a weight loss program. It shouldn't. They should be able to still enjoy one drink. We just have to make up for it somewhere else. I know we can get into the substrate usage and oxidation, using the alcohol first before other macronutrients and other things like that, and inhibitions or whatever. But one standard drink shouldn't break a plan. Someone should be able to do that. If they want to stop and they don't really care, then that's one thing. But if it's like, no, I want to have it, I like it, I enjoy it, then that shouldn't be a big issue.
Awesome. Spencer, thank you so much for your time. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Dr. Spencer Nadolsky. And Spencer, we'll speak to you next time.
Yes, thanks for having me, buddy.
Not a problem.